The Garmin 530-430 series has dramatically changed the way pilots fly IFR. It allowed a whole new way to navigate and added a lot of flexibility in flight planning and flying in general. With this new flexibility, of course, came some new things to get used to. We'll address these in this lesson as we explore the use of the Garmin 530 for IFR flying. This is the first of 3 parts on using the Garmin 530 for IFR operations. We'll be discussing using the flight plan for IFR operations, defining airways, the first function of the OBS button called Suspend Mode, and then we'll look at loading a GPS approach. Now we're going to look at using the IFR portions of the Garmin 530. The first thing to know is there aren't any airways depicted on the Garmin 530. For the purposes of this simulation, I'm going to initialize this simulator for Reed Hillview Airport in San Jose, California. What I'm going to do first is build a flight plan from Reed Hillview to the San Jose VOR, then Victor 334, which is going to run somewhere like this, to Sunol, then Victor 195 to Manteca, and then to Stockton Airport. And it really doesn't matter that airways aren't depicted on the Garmin 530 because airways are just routes between either 2 VORs or a VOR and an intersection, and we have all those on the Garmin 530. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose this button, Flight Plan, and we're going to build up this flight plan. Of course, you'll need your en route chart in front of you in order to build this plan. So let's go to the Flight Plan Catalog, which is the next page, and build a new flight plan. First we press Menu, then Create New Flight Plan, press Enter. That's the S button, or OK button. And now we're going to put Reed Hillview first, KRHV. And Enter. The next leg will be San Jose VOR, which is SJC. It's not KSJC because Kilo SJC is the San Jose International Airport. Airports begin with the letter K in the United States. So the VOR is SJC, that's 3 letters. There's S, then J, Juliet, and C. And then press Enter. Okay, there are 2 possible choices for SJC. One is a VOR in the southwest United States, the other is a VOR in Brazil. I think we'll choose the San Jose VOR in the southwest United States, so OK that. That's the one, accept it, yes. And now we have these 2 points built up. The next leg will be Victor 334, which originates at the San Jose VOR, and it ends right over at Sunol intersection. So all we need to do is to enter Sunol intersection here, and we'll have a line drawn between the San Jose VOR and Sunol intersection. So let's do that. And intersections are 5 letters long. And here's Sunol intersection. Press Enter to accept that. And we have another line that will be drawn between San Jose and Sunol. Then Victor 195 goes between Sunol intersection and Manteca VOR. So we'll choose Manteca, ECA. That's a VOR. And we'll press Enter to accept that. And it is the Southwest United States VOR that we want, not the one in Argentina. And accept it. The next thing we're going to do is enter the airport name we're going to go to, and that would be Stockton, KSCK, Sierra Charlie Kilo. And incidentally, Manteca VOR here is an initial approach fix for many of the instrument approaches at Stockton. So we'll enter KSCK. And there's Stockton Metro Airport. Enter. So now we're going to take a look and see what this looks like on the moving map. So first we're going to activate this flight plan. So menu and activate flight plan. That's the S key, enter. And this leg now, radio view to San Jose, is the active leg. And let's go back to the moving map. And we'll do that by pressing the flight plan key once. And now we're back to the moving map and we can check the route. And let's take a look at it. So here we're going from radio view to San Jose VOR to Sunol to Manteca and then to Stockton. And this lines up with our en route chart. And it's a vector from radio view to San Jose VOR. And then from there it's Victor 334 to Sunol, Victor 195 to Manteca, and then direct to Stockton. Okay, let's go back to the flight plan mode. This is our active flight plan. And now we're going to add an instrument approach procedure. So let's bring the cursor down to Stockton. So what we'll do is press cursor, the button here, use the outer ring to go down to Stockton. Okay, now we have Stockton highlighted, and what we're going to do now is click this button, proc, it means procedure. So let's do that. And now you can see we have many choices. We have select approach, select arrival, or select departure. So in this case, we're interested in selecting an instrument approach, so we'll press enter to OK that. And these are the approaches that are available at Stockton. So we'll choose the GPS approach. So we just use the outer ring to scroll to that and press enter. And it asks us how we want to transition on this approach, whether it'll be vectors, via this intersection, OxJEF, it's an initial approach fix, Stiller, RAPS, or from the Manteca VOR. So we're going to choose from the Manteca VOR. And in real life flying, sometimes we won't know exactly where we're going to start this approach from. So we just would load something that we think might be close, and then we can edit the flight plan later. So we're going to choose Manteca for now. And there we can see the approach, and it says load or activate, so we'll load it. And now we can see that what's happened is we've added this instrument approach after the Stockton airport. So let's have a look at that. So as we go down through, we can see that we have Manteca, Stockton, then the instrument approach, which starts at Manteca, goes to OxJEF, then there's a holding procedure there, or a course reversal, then it'll go to IPDU, then finally the runway 29 right at Stockton. This is the missed approach. It's Orang intersection, and there's a hold there. So we've got the missed approach and hold in there, although we'll talk a little bit more about missed approaches on the GPS here in a little bit. For now, we can just see that it's been added. Now, a very interesting thing has occurred here on the flight plan, and this is something you need to know about the Garmin 530 or 430, and that is when we built up the flight plan, we had to put where we were going here, the airport. But when you look at how the flight plan is going to be flown, if we go back to the top, it's going to go from radio view, San Jose, Sunol, Manteca, and then to Stockton. And then, after that, it wants to go back to Manteca, which doesn't really make any sense. So what we needed to do in order to start the flight plan is to actually put in the Stockton airport, so we could reference the procedure button over here. But now that we've done that, we actually want to get rid of this point. So it goes from Manteca and then to Stockton. So let's do that. And the way we do that is by scrolling up to Stockton and pressing the clear button. And it says, do you want to remove Stockton? We'll say yes. Also notice that we have Manteca in here twice, so we'll get rid of this one. Now if we were going to OxJEF instead, then this point wouldn't really be here, the other ECA. But because we chose the VOR, it's actually going to try to go to Manteca twice, so we'll get rid of the one on top. And we'll say clear, yes. And now we have a flight plan that looks like it would work. Let's take a look at it on the moving map. So it's going to be flight plan button. Now we can see the entire plan, which goes from radio view over to San Jose, Sunol, down to Manteca, and then the instrument approach starts. And now we can pan over and take a look and see what that looks like. So we'll use the cursor button, and then we'll start moving over that way. And now we can see the whole course, and it looks like it goes to Manteca, then to OxJEF with a course reversal, back to IPDU, and then to the runway. So that looks fine. Okay, so let's go back to the flight plan mode for a moment. Flight plan. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look and see if Read Wheel View has a departure procedure. So what we can do is we can press cursor, and that brings the cursor up, and then we can press procedure over Read Wheel View Airport. And the choices here are activate vectors to final, activate the approach, select arrival, and so on. So now we'll use the outer ring to select departure, press enter, and we see Read Wheel View Airport here. It does not have a departure. If it did, it would be added to the flight plan section, which is here. It would be added right here below Read Wheel View. That's it for this lesson. What we're going to do in the next lesson is we're actually going to fly a GPS approach from this flight plan. In this second lesson on IFR procedures, we'll take the route we've created in the last lesson and fly it. We'll also set up the GPS to load and execute a GPS approach. This is where we start putting all the VFR and IFR operations of the GPS together. In this lesson, we're going to fly the flight plan we created to Stockton. Let's look at the route. We're going to fly from Read Wheel View to San Jose to Sonoma intersection, then to the Manteca VOR, then Oxjeff, and then we're going to do a course reversal. Then we'll cross IPDU, which is the final approach fix, and from there we'll proceed to runway 29 right. If we miss the approach, we'll have to navigate from runway 29 right to Orang intersection. Here's another very important thing to know about using the Garmin 530 and 430 GPS. The missed approach path is not displayed on the GPS. You'll have to use the instrument approach procedure to get the path. Alright, so now we're going to fly this. So I'll press flight plan, back to the moving map. Now I'm going to start the simulator and pre-position the airplane over the Manteca VOR. And now as we begin getting close to the instrument approach at Stockton, I need to talk to you about a few keys on the Garmin 430, 530 that are going to be very important. And the first key is the OBS key, this one right here. The OBS key serves two functions on the Garmin 530. The first function is to use it like an OBS or Omni bearing selector, and we'll look at that in the next lesson. For this lesson, and for GPS approaches in particular, the OBS button also can suspend the approach. And if you remember from our VFR lessons in flight planning, you know that as we build the flight plan, it leg sequences or sequences to the next leg automatically in the flight plan. And while that's mostly a good idea, this can be a problem on a GPS approach. And the reason that can be a problem is if there's a course reversal or a holding pattern depicted, and we need to fly that course reversal or holding pattern. So in this case, we need to suspend the GPS, and we do that by pressing the OBS button once we're established where we want to be in the course reversal. We'll look at that here in just a moment. Now notice we're heading from the Manteca VOR to Oxjeff. That's shown to us here. We're right on track. This is our ground speed, and this is our estimated time en route. This is the distance to the fix, the next fix, and this is our track, and this is our direct track. The pink line, again, is the active leg. So to execute this procedure correctly, I need to fly to Oxjeff, then I need to press the suspend or OBS button to allow the GPS to stop leg sequencing. So let's do that. Alright, now we're approaching Oxjeff. What we have to do here is fly the course reversal. And now the GPS is in suspend mode. I'll manually navigate the airplane around this holding procedure. Notice that the GPS was in suspend mode. Now it's not, so it will leg sequence from here. So if I want to suspend the operation, I have to press the OBS button. That will cause it to suspend again, and we can complete this procedure. So for example, if we were instructed to hold a few times over Oxjeff, we'd have to do that. Now we'll continue holding at OxJEF. This time around, we'll take the GPS out of suspend mode and back to approach or leg sequence mode. And this suspend will disappear. Now we'll begin the inbound turn. Once we're established back inbound, this SUSP suspend goes away. If we want to suspend the GPS from leg mode, we'll have to press this button again. Now the GPS has automatically sequenced from OxJEF to IPDU, which is the final approach fix. Another thing to note on our way is that we're in terminal mode now. You may not execute a GPS approach until you're in approach mode. That must occur within 2 miles of the final approach fix. So that's what we'll be looking for next, for this to change from terminal to approach. If it doesn't, we have to execute the missed approach procedure. Another thing to point out here is normally we'll navigate using the airplane's CDI and a real VOR head. This is not legal for IFR flight right here. But to save a little space, I've just not shown you the actual CDI. Notice now that we're within 2 miles of the final approach fix, and we're now in approach mode so we can continue the approach. Another very important thing to notice is that the CDI right here, the CDI switch, is in GPS mode, which is allowing the GPS data to be fed to the external CDI. And now we're on our way from IPDU to runway 29 right, so we're inside of the final approach fix. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see the missed approach. Okay, so you can see here's the runway threshold, and then you see the hold over here associated with Orang intersection, but notice that there isn't really a way to get from here to there. So you have to have your instrument approach procedure and build the way to get over here. Now we're approaching the missed approach point. Notice that as we cross the missed approach point, the GPS went to suspend mode. And now there really isn't a way to leg sequence over to where the missed approach hold is. So this is why we have to use the instrument approach procedure and be aware of that when using GPS approaches. In the next lesson, we're going to look at overlay approaches. In this third part of IFR operations using the Garmin 530, we'll be discussing how to modify your flight plan to include departure and arrival procedures. Next, we'll set up the GPS for doing overlay approaches. Overlay approaches are approaches that are other than GPS approaches. Basically, we can set up the GPS to overlay an ILS, VOR, LDA, and so on, and we can monitor our progress using the moving map. We'll also perform an overlay approach to San Francisco Airport and show you how to deal with being vectored onto an approach segment after you've loaded the approach. The last thing we'll discuss is the second function of the OBS button. we'll look at how to define bearings around a fix using this very useful feature. And now we're going to look at overlay approaches using the Garmin 530. First, I'm going to build up a flight plan from San Jose Airport to San Francisco International Airport. I do that by pressing the Flight Plan button. Next, I'll use the inner ring to choose the flight plan catalog. Then I'll choose the Menu button. Create New Flight Plan. This is our Yes button, Enter. And I'm going to plan the route San Jose, Woodside VOR, and then San Francisco International. So I'll build up the flight plan first. And that's San Jose International, and I'll select that, Enter. Next point will be Woodside, that's Oscar Sierra India, OSI. And Enter. And then finally, KSFO. And Enter. Now we have the basic flight plan built. So the next thing we're going to do is add a departure from San Jose to the flight plan. The way we do that is press Menu and then select Departure. Then press Enter. And then we're asked which departure procedure we'd like, and we'd like the Loop 1 departure. So we'll scroll down to that, press Enter. Then for which runway? We'll use runway 29er. Press Enter. Next, it asks us which transition we'd like to load. We have many transitions to choose from, so in this case, we're going to pick Red Bluff, RBL, and Enter. And then Load. We'll say yes to that. And now let's look at the flight plan. So we'll be departing San Jose, and let's look at the data points. Going to the San Jose VOR, this intersection, Red Bluff. And then for the en route portion, we'll be going to the Woodside VOR and then San Francisco. So this isn't a very realistic departure because we'd have to go all the way to Red Bluff, which is a long way away, just to come back to the Woodside VOR. So most likely what we'll be getting on this departure procedure is a vector somewhere between San Jose VOR or Ronry intersection to Woodside. It's very unlikely we'd go to Diablo or Red Bluff. So we're going to delete those points on the flight plan. The way we do that, use the outer ring, scroll down to Diablo, press Clear. To remove Diablo, yes. The same thing with Red Bluff. Remove Red Bluff, yes. And now we have a plan that looks a little better. We're going to depart, go to San Jose, Ronry, then over to Woodside and San Francisco. Now we're going to see what it looks like on the moving map. We press Flight Plan, and we have a look. Let's go back to the flight plan. Alright, so we'll look at our flight plan now. Looks better. 42 miles away instead of 300 and something. Okay, now what I'd like to do is select an arrival procedure for San Francisco. So I'm going to press Menu, then select Arrival. Press Enter. And then we need to tell the GPS which arrival. We'll pick the Point Reyes 1 arrival down here. Enter. Which transition? E and I. Enter. And we'll load that. And now we'll see how that looks on the flight plan. We'll scroll down through. And there's the arrival. And notice that Woodside and San Francisco are already in the flight plan here. So if we wanted this arrival to work, we just delete these two data points, Woodside and San Francisco. That's assuming we wanted to fly the departure procedure as we have it from San Jose and this arrival into San Francisco. So for now, I'm going to delete the arrival. So I'm going to do that by scrolling over it with the outer ring and pressing clear. Then remove 0.1 arrival, yes. Now that's gone. So we can activate this flight plan now by pressing menu and then activate flight plan, yes. Let's look at the moving map. So as you can see, there's a fair amount of editing on the GPS to do before we actually take flight. And now we're going to start flying this flight plan from San Jose to San Francisco, and we're going to demonstrate an overlay approach. Now if we knew what approach we were going to get at San Francisco, we could in fact add that approach here now. We could do that by pressing Procedure. So we're going to assume we don't know what approach we're going to get, and then on route we'll select the approach using this key here, this button, Procedure. Okay, I'm going to cause the simulator to start flying now. Then we'll go to the moving map page. Again, just click Flight Plan. And now you can see we're on the track to the San Jose VOR in 11 seconds. Our next leg will be this leg. Okay, that line is pink now, which is our active leg, San Jose to this intersection, 2 minutes and 46 seconds ahead of us. So in order to make the video a reasonable size, occasionally I'll cut out parts of the trip. The main points will be here. Okay, now we're approaching this intersection, and from here the airplane will go from Ronry intersection to the Woodside VOR. Okay, now it's 5 minutes and 30 seconds to the Woodside VOR. And at this point, I'm going to start selecting the instrument approach for San Francisco. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to Flight Plan, go down here to San Francisco, choose Procedure, and now select Approach, Enter. Here are the available choices, and I'm going to choose the ILS 28 left. And we'll enter. And how are we going to do that? Vectors, Faith intersection, Menlo, we'll use Menlo as an initial approach fix. And then load. And notice here that I get a GPS warning. It says GPS guidance is for monitoring only. Do you still want to load the approach? And we'll answer yes to that by pressing the Enter key. And now the approach is loaded after the airport. So we can edit that, look at it. And now what we need to do is delete this point SFO from the GPS flight plan, because we don't want the GPS to fly from Woodside to San Francisco and then do the approach. We want it to fly from Woodside and then do this piece. So we'll go there and edit that. San Francisco, clear. Remove it, yes. And now that's removed. Okay, now we'll go back out to the moving map. So now we're flying from Ronry to Woodside. 3 minutes to run. And we have the approach loaded. And we can see all the approach here. And now we're going to assume the controller gives us a vector. What we can do is we can click Flight Plan, and we can scroll down to where the vector was to, and we can choose Menu, and then Activate Leg. Okay, now we're turning from Heman to Oktu. That line is pink, which means that's the active leg, and it's 1 minute and 27 minutes in front of us. At this point, it's very important for us to remember that we're not flying a GPS approach, we're flying a ILS approach. And notice we get a warning here which says select the appropriate frequency for the approach. And that would be 109.55. Now we're identified here, and this is identified as the ILS for San Francisco. Now it tells us to select VLOC on the CDI for the approach. And we'll do that, and now we change to VLOC. That means we're tracking now the real localizer. And now we start descending on the ILS. Okay, and the approach is almost concluded. We have about 37 seconds to run, and you've just finished your first overlay approach using the Garmin 530. And notice that the GPS has gone into suspend mode. And in this lesson, the last thing I wanted to show you when using the Garmin 530 was the other function of the OBS button. The OBS button is located here. You remember one of its functions was to unsuspend an approach. Its second function is to actually be able to take an intersection or a VOR, like Faith here, and cause bearings to be drawn through that intersection that you can actually intercept. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select Faith as an intersection for us to navigate to. I'm going to do that by selecting Direct To, and then I'm going to put Faith intersection up here. And there's Faith intersection. Now enter. And now we're going to Faith intersection. Now if I choose OBS mode, it asks me what course I'd like to OBS to. And we can change this here. Enter. And now you can see we've drawn a new course line through Faith intersection. It's very useful for holding procedures. And that concludes this lesson on using the Garmin 530. Well, that's the end of the Garmin 530 IFR procedures lessons. In fact, this is the end of this course. We hope that now you are able to start using the Garmin 530 and put what you've learned in this course into practice. Thanks for choosing MS Aviation, and good flying.